Welcome back, Josh the Driving Instructor here. Today we are looking at driving test myths, misconceptions, and when we're just being taught wrong. Now, is this a controversial video? Quite possibly. Why? Because driving instructors like to teach slightly differently, and some of the ideas are a little bit outdated. I'm going to give you my opinion as to why I teach these specific ways, and if you've got any feedback, if anyone out there teaches differently, feel free to get involved and let me know in the comments below. After all, every day is a school day. Why am I doing this video? Well, the 10 points that we are actually going to look at today, I've come across those maybe not on a daily basis, but on quite a regular basis. And I thought, if I'm dealing with this on a regular basis, chances are there's other people out there that are also getting these misconceptions and misunderstandings from somewhere. So let's share them and discuss why we don't do them or why we should do them and try and clear those up. As always, feel free to support me on Patreon. Really appreciate it in the link below. Let's get stuck in. So you tell me with each of these if it's a misconception, a myth, or if you think it's just wrong. Stalling on your driving test will mean a serious fault. You'll fail your driving test basically for stalling. This is a misconception or even just a myth. If you stall on your driving test, which I've had plenty of students do, in fact I've had students stall multiple times on their driving test, they'd still pass their driving test. Why? Because the situations they stalled were not dangerous, they corrected the mistake and then they drove on. Saying that though, if you stall in the middle of a roundabout or somewhere particularly dangerous and you do not deal with it correctly, causing a dangerous situation, then yes, that could lead to a serious fault. We must hold the wheel at the 10 and 2 position. If we don't, we'll be marked down on our driving test. This is a misconception. Yes, once upon a time, it was enforced that you must hold the wheel at the 10 and 2 position. However, this is no longer the case. In fact, you're probably more encouraged to hold the wheel at the 9 and 3 or quarter to 3 option instead. It's meant to be safer if you get into an accident, but I'm not going to go into that. The point is you do no longer have to hold the wheel at the 10 and 2 position, and providing you have 2 hands on the wheel and it is being held safely and securely at all times, obviously not when you're changing gear or etc., then the examiner is not going to give a darn. Crossing your hands on the wheel when driving will lead to you failing your driving test. That is a myth or misconception. In fact, providing you are holding the wheel with 2 hands at all times when necessary, the examiner is not going to give a monkeys if you cross your arms or not. Saying that, I do not teach people to cross their arms. In fact, I recommend the push and pull positioning, just because it's far easier to use the wheel, it's far easier to control the car, but point being, it is not a serious fault crossing your arms. When overtaking a parked car, bus or lorry, we must signal to go round the vehicle and then signal back to go back onto our side of the road. This is a misconception. In fact, I go as far as to say it is just wrong. Why is this wrong? Well, if you're a car and you're traveling towards a parked car on the side of the road, all the cars behind you can see that you're traveling towards a parked car on the side of the road. They know that you are not going to plow into that parked car. The only option you have is to go round the parked car. Therefore, you don't need to signal to let people know that you're going to go round the parked car. However, if you now put a signal on to say I'm going to travel around that parked car, you're now giving the drivers behind you 2 options. You are either turning right into a driveway, a junction or whatever else, or you are traveling around the parked car. Moral to the story is, there's no point signaling around a parked car. However, if you are changing lanes, so if you're on a dual carriageway or a multiple laned road and there are parked cars in the left lane, you should always signal to change lanes. When you pay for your driving test, this is a good one. When you pay for your driving test, you have paid for the car and your driving instructor's time as well. That is a myth, and it's a pretty embarrassing conversation to have with your students or anyone else. And definitely don't turn up to your driving test without a car. When you pay the DVSA for your driving test, that money goes to the DVSA for having an examiner with you for that time and giving you the feedback that you need for your driving test. The driving instructor doesn't see a penny of that money at all, and in order to use a driving instructor or the driving instructor's car, you would need to pay your driving instructor as well. When arriving at traffic lights, red lights, or slow moving traffic, you must put the car into neutral each time you stop. Well, this is a misconception. Can you put it into neutral when you stop? Absolutely. What's the benefit of this? Well, there is not really any evidence that this saves any wear and tear on the clutch or on the gearbox. So the only benefit for this would be to rest your feet. So yes, perhaps if I was in roadwork lights and I was going to be waiting there for quite a while, yes, I would probably put it into neutral. What's the benefit of putting it into neutral if I can't just hold the clutch for a few seconds? Not a lot. What's the negatives to it? Well, as a learner, if I've then got to put it into neutral and suddenly the lights change, I've now got to quickly rush to put my clutch down, put it into first, get the bite. Meanwhile, I've got a pile of cars behind me that are impatient and want to get to work. And now I'm worrying about all of this that could have all been ready if I hadn't put it into neutral before this. So my opinion is don't put it into neutral. If you have a different opinion as to why you should put it into neutral, I would love to hear it in the comments below, because after all, every day is a school day. Final point with this, the driving examiner will not mark you down for not putting it into neutral, and they will not mark you down for putting it into neutral, providing the car is safe and secure at all times. I must put the handbrake on every time I go to a set of traffic lights or a junction. This is a misconception. In fact, I don't teach people to constantly use the handbrake. If we are on a big hill with a junction or traffic lights, then I would encourage the handbrake. Again, if we're going to be sitting for a long period of time, maybe 10 or more seconds, I would encourage to use the handbrake. If not, I encourage people to learn to get the bite and use the car properly in first gear without the handbrake. Saying this though, there is nothing wrong with using the handbrake, and if you disagree with what I'm saying, I would love to hear it in the comments below. My reasons for this are it teaches the student to make sure they've got really good clutch control. It also means they can get off reasonably quickly without having to mess around with the handbrake every time they stop and go. On top of this, once they pass their driving test, how many people do you know that constantly use the handbrake? Me personally, not many. So why would you then be doing it for your driving test if you're not going to be doing it in real life? When we pull over, or when we're asked to pull over on the side of the road, we need to leave our indicator on. This is a misconception, or it's just again wrong. Once we pulled over to the side of the road and we've actually stopped the car and secured the car, we then want to turn our indicator off. Why, you might ask? Because it actually can be very confusing. First of all, it's very clear to the drivers that you are pulled over because you're no longer in a driving position. Your car is closer to the curb, showing that you are not going anywhere. If you leave that signal on from a distance, it can look like your car is still slowly moving, and it becomes a little bit confusing as to whether you're parked or whether you're slowly moving down the road to pull over or take your next road on the left. So best option is make sure you turn your signal back off. Should I leave my signal on when I pull away from the side of the road when I'm driving off from a parked position? Well, this is an interesting one. If there is a very busy road, if you're on a very busy road and you need to get off at some point and there's no sign that the traffic's going to stop, then yes, I would encourage you to leave your signal on. This is going to encourage people to make space, and eventually perhaps someone will let you out. However, if you're on a quiet road where you can see 3 to 4 cars coming by, then no, I would not put my signal on. Why? Because you'll soon notice if you leave your signal on, it can make the drivers very wary and a little bit panicky as to whether or not you've actually looked to see them. Because if you have, there'd be no need to put your signal on. Why not wait till the drivers are gone, then put the signal on, and then follow the last driver out? On my driving test, I will fail for going the wrong way. This is a myth. If you get confused with your left and rights, it's absolutely fine, because the driving test is not about directions. It's about safety and control of the car. So if you go the wrong way, providing you go the wrong way safely, this will not result in any minor at all. It would, however, just be worth acknowledging it to the examiner and saying, I've gone the wrong way because I'm in the wrong lane, or I've just gone the wrong way. Can you redirect? If you've got any thoughts on any of those points that I've talked about, please get them in the comments below. Every day's a school day. I'd love to hear your opinions. And that is it from me. All the best. Josh out.